We did try to incorporate elements that sounded French, but we also had to nod to the fact that even though we're set in the French Revolution, many of these characters are thousands of years old, and the battle they're fighting, the Belmonts versus the forces of evil, is one that has been raging for hundreds of years.
The first thing I want to ask is just kind of basic stuff. Like I know you did this with Trevor Morris,
Mm-hmm.
who you have done so much work with over the years. Like
Yeah.
at this point, how does your collaboration together work?
Yeah, so Trevor was one of my first mentors when I got into this business, and I've been working with him in the Castlevania, cinematic universe since 2017. So it's been a long time. And his philosophy on storytelling, his approach to composing, production, mixing, all of it is very much in everything that I do. And originally, when I started working with him, it was co-producing pieces of music and writing additional music for him. And like I said, it was kind of a mentor-mentee role. But over the years, we've become partners and collaborators, and we've started co-composing soundtracks together, which has been a lot of fun. And I loved being a part of the original Castlevania so much. So when he asked me to co-score this with him, it was probably the easiest yes of my career.
I saw that you had been on that, and I imagine it's like an emotional experience when any show comes to an end. Did you
Yes.
know this was happening as the last one was ending?
No, no, I didn't. I always, I played the games as a kid, and I knew the depth of the Castlevania universe and franchise. So I always thought it was a ripe and fertile ground to do further explorations and evolutions, but I didn't know that this was coming at all. So again, when Trevor told me about it, it was a huge surprise, and I was really, really, really excited. And that was now almost 2 years to the day
Wow.
since we got involved, which is cool. It's rare that we get to be a part of something uh, so ahead of time.
So since you had spent so much time in this universe, like what did you want to keep from what you had done before in terms of like palette and stuff like that? And where did you want to kind of branch out?
Yeah, Netflix and the production team were very, very direct that they wanted this to feel like a new evolution of the story. They didn't want it to necessarily just feel like Castlevania Original 2.0. They wanted Nocturne to be its own story, its own universe, its own cast of characters. So with the score, we tried to do something new and different. And I think the palette is very different from the original. The original, a lot of epic orchestra percussion, huge synths. It was a very heavy and high octane score, and there is still plenty of that. And there's a lot of amazing action sequences. You have your classic orchestra, organ, choir, everything turned up to 11. But at the same time, one of the things I love about Nocturne is it's at the same time that it's big and epic and huge and has amazing action sequences, it's also very grounded and organic and character driven. And the characters have amazing and very intricate arcs. And so we wanted this score to be even more thematic than the original was. And we wanted each character to have their own very unique sound world. So we did something that we didn't do in the original. We recorded a lot of soloists playing instruments that range from viola da gamba, which is something you don't hear very often in scores these days, electric cello, even conch shell. There's a musician, his name's Don Shelton. He plays tuned conch shells, and it's the most beautiful and haunting sound. It's really, really special. And it also just it looks so cool watching him play. So we definitely took a more experimental approach than the original, which I love. I grew up with experimental music, and that's kind of the world that I came from. So any chance I get to work with cool instruments or make weird sounds and create something new is always an exciting opportunity for me. So when Netflix came to us and said, we want it to be experimental, we want the score to be front and center, and we want it to sound like something people haven't heard before, I was very, very excited because you don't always necessarily get that direction.
It's set during the French Revolution, right? I think.
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
did you lean into the Frenchness of it all at all, or did you kind of not want to?
So yes and no. On the one hand, we the show definitely inhabits the revolutionary zeitgeist of the time. And so even the storylines that aren't directly connected to the French Revolution are tinged with the spirit of revolution, which is really cool. So I would say the score, uh, the spirit of revolution inhabits the score, and the score feels like it comes out of that zeitgeist. So, for instance, the theme for one of the main characters, Maria Renard, who's a playable character in the games, she's young, she's idealistic, she has the revolutionary spirit, and her theme is kind of a rousing call to arms for the disaffected youth of the French Revolution. And at the same time, the theme for Annette, who's another one of the main characters, shares the spirit, but sounds like it comes from another world because she comes out of the slave plantations of the Caribbean. And so it's not necessarily directly connected to the French Revolution, but it shares the same spirit. More specifically, without giving anything away, with one of the primary villains of the series, we definitely wanted this character to feel both aristocratic and of the period, but at the same time ancient and evil because they're a vampire. So we balanced that with a very French sounding harpsichord,
Mm.
which is kind of mangled, and we use weird effects on it to make it sound otherworldly. And then more ancient sounding vocals and low horns and more esoteric sounding instruments. So we did try to incorporate elements that sounded French, but we also had to nod to the fact that even though we're set in the French Revolution, many of these characters are thousands of years old, and the battle they're fighting, the Belmonts versus the forces of evil, is one that has been raging for hundreds of years.
I listened to a Divine Bloodlines on YouTube because I
Yeah.
saw your Instagram post, and one comment from a year ago said, "Netflix better do this song justice." And then right above it, a year later, like a few months ago, was like, "I can fairly say that Netflix did in fact do this song justice."
That's so
So
great. That's awesome.
clearly, it's something people are like very passionate about. Like when you were arranging this kind of like classic music,
Hmm.
did you have a sense of pressure, or was it just as a fan you were
Not at all. No, no pressure at all. No, it's I learned on the first season. Like I said, I played the games as a kid and I
yeah
loved the games, but I had been far removed from them for years. And so when we were working on the original series, I got to know just how passionate the fan base still is.
yeah
And it was cool. I got to go back and reconnect with some of the games. And I'm playing one of them now, just to kind of get in the spirit. And so I learned in a very new way how much the music of the games means to the fans. So I'm always very aware of that. Now, our number one priority is to be the best storytellers that we can, and our job is to support the story, support the production staff, and support the characters and make it the best narrative that it can possibly be. But at the same time, both Trevor and I are very, very aware of the fan base. And so it's definitely an added layer of pressure that I think ultimately takes the score to the next level because we know that people are listening and people are paying attention. And Netflix knows too, and that's why they wanted us to take the score to a new level and make it front and center. When it comes to the original game music, those decisions are up to the lawyers in terms of what can be used and what can't, because it's music that's owned by Konami, so it's not music that we can just use at will. As a result, it's very, very exciting when we get the call and they say we get to use Divine Bloodlines, or in the case of the original series, Bloody Tears. And we take very, very special care with those pieces. We go through multiple versions. We get a lot of feedback, and we spend as much time on that single piece of music as we would on an entire episode. And so a lot of tender loving care goes into that.
Using like Divine Bloodlines as an example, like how much did it change since you first started trying to arrange it versus like if you're spending that much time on it, did it?
Yeah, the way, and I learned this from going back to Trevor's version of Bloody Tears for the original. I actually like to start because there's been many versions of these pieces throughout the years, either in the games or covers. I like to go to the original version from the game, so the simple kind of 16-bit chiptune, because that way I'm not influenced by what's been done, because there's amazing versions of these pieces out there, and it's a lot of pressure to listen to those and then say, oh my gosh, now I have to do something that's going to live up to that. So I prefer to keep that out and kind of keep the blinders on and focus on the original source material. And so the piece kind of evolves in building blocks from there. We really start with the original melody, the original harmony, and let's just arrange this and make the melody fit the scene. Because like I said, that's our primary goal, is we're storytellers. So when it comes to the trailer, making the melody really shine in context of what you're seeing on screen. And then beyond that, it's adding production value. It's deciding what instruments we're going to use. In the case of this, we went through many iterations, from fully orchestral to fully rock band to somewhere in between. And we settled on guitar, electric cello, some amazing vocals by Ari Mason, who's featured throughout the series, both on vocals and viola da gamba. I don't think she's playing viola da gamba on Divine Bloodlines, but she does throughout the series, and she's amazing. So it's hard to answer how many iterations we went through, but I would say there were many back and forths between me and Trevor and with the production team to get it where it is. Building from that simple melody to the massive piece that it is.
I know you can't really speak in detail about things, but is there anything that you can talk about that you're just excited for people to see and or hear when this comes out?
I hesitate to say favorites, but I think the most exciting additions to the Castlevania cinematic universe. I think I may have just coined that phrase, by the way. I don't know. But they're Annette and Edouard, and they the original Castlevania and the Castlevania games exist primarily in Europe, and as such, that's the setting, that's the characters that we're used to. The cool thing about Nocturne is we expand the geography and the culture of the show to incorporate other areas of the world, which was exciting for us as composers. And with both Annette and Edouard coming from the Caribbean, coming from the vampire enforced slavery there, it gave us the chance to explore a new context and new instruments and new sounds. And more specifically with Edouard, the character is a world-renowned opera singer, and he is played by Sidney James Harcourt, who is an absolutely unbelievable vocalist. He's been on Broadway. He was in the original cast of Hamilton. He's an absolutely insanely talented individual. So we got a chance to work with him very early on these pieces of classical music that Edouard sings.
Wow.
And that was a very special opportunity that I've never had before and possibly never will again. And that's one of the reasons Trevor and I were brought in so early. We were brought in before there was any animatic to even look at. It was just reading the scripts, talking with Kevin and Clive, the showrunners, talking with Sam and Adam, the directors, and working with Sidney on these pieces. And he's just an absolute joy to work with. He's incredibly talented. And it was fun to go back and work with some classical pieces that I may have, studied a long time ago. but had the chance to reacquaint myself with.